Well, hi there. It's good to see you right here on Health Diary. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and today we're coming to you from the Aga Khan University. So, every infant and child has a right to good nutrition. However, 45% of child deaths globally have been associated with undernutrition. And as we focus on weaning the baby, which is the conversation today, how then do you know that your child is getting all the nutrients that they need for their growth and development? Well, we find out after this fact of the matter.
Breast milk is the natural food that is first available to babies. They are then weaned slowly from it onto other regular foods used by the family. Although it varies from culture to culture and is often regulated by the child's individual needs, this process must be carefully watched to make sure that every baby grows well and stays healthy.
Well, let's understand weaning, and we'll also talk a little bit about the difference between baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding, and which is which, okay? Because majority of the parents, they're like, so at what point do we introduce our babies to solid food? Is pureed food also good for them? It's a lot of things. But we have the perfect person to help us with that conversation, and we have Dr. Faith Etienne, who's a pediatric resident right here at Aga Khan University Hospital. So, Doc, can we just start with understanding at the very basic level? What are we talking about?
We start from the beginning, right?
From the beginning. Yes.
Okay, so weaning, first of all, let me say it is a gradual process. It's not a solitary event. You don't just wake up and baby is weaned.
Yeah.
It is a gradual process where you are balancing out giving breast milk and introducing other nutritious foods. Okay, so ideally, weaning, which is also called complementary feeding, is introduced at 6 months of age.
All right.
Yeah. We do not aim to introduce that earlier because of issues like gut immaturity in those who are less than 6 months of age, and also the increased risk of introducing infections from diarrheal illnesses to even respiratory infections, and also challenges with digestion. Yeah. So at 6 months, you have a variety of foods that may be introduced. Yeah. And ideally, this should be done under the guidance of your trusted and qualified healthcare provider. Yeah. I know a wide number, like a large number of people essentially wing it, but there's a method to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's so many people who would say, but when we're eating, the baby's just looking at your hand and in the movement of your hand to your mouth.
Yeah.
And you see some of them drooling.
Yeah.
Others just want to touch whatever it is. So you're saying at the first 6 months, please don't.
Yeah.
At any, so it should be exclusive breastfeeding, which is recommended.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how with those beautiful eyes, don't.
Yes.
Or some of us, what some of us do when we're eating, like, say, chicken and the drumstick, and we have the kabod, we want to give the baby just to keep them busy. No.
So essentially what is recommended is the exclusive breastfeeding, and should you need to supplement that with something, then formula feeds. It has the necessary nutrients, both the breastfeeding, the breast milk or the formula milk, necessary nutrients for that stage of life up to 6 months. It has the water content, it has the energy, or rather it provides the necessary calories up until that age, and it is considered safe. And these are universal recommendations, both from WHO, UNICEF, even our Kenyan Ministry of Health. They are universal recommendations.
Okay,
yeah.
I see. Okay. But people say also babies are different. There are others who develop very quickly, and they say girls apparently develop more faster than the boys. So some sit, way quicker. Others don't want breast milk, way earlier. So the parents are like, so then what do I give this child? Mekata breast milk, they've refused formula. What do you give this child before they get to the 6 month mark?
Yeah. Many a times, by the time a child is refusing feeds, question is, what is going on? Yeah. So why?
Right.
Why are they refusing feeds? Because that may be a manifestation of something underlying. Yeah. One, that may happen if you introduce something early, because you see, this is a difference in texture, a difference in odor, a difference in flavors, and you are introducing it there. Then you go back to the milk that you were giving before, and you're like, amekata.
Yeah.
Another thing is that people have a tendency sometimes to introduce things like cow's milk when they think their milk is inadequate, and that also comes with its own challenges. And children have a tendency to prefer cow's milk, yet it is not ideal for them below the age of 1 year, and it should not actually be introduced. So if at all that temptation to introduce something in the name of baby is refusing feeds is coming, ask yourself, why are we refusing in the first place? Because this is what we have been taking and we have been tolerating it.
Oh, I see.
And under no circumstances, ideally, should we be introducing other feeds.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So exclusive breastfeeding, cow's milk, absolutely. Why do kids prefer cow's milk?
One, it's sort of tastier.
Sweet, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing about cow's milk, it is quite filling. It is protein dense, but it is deficient sort of in other nutrients.
Okay.
And it also impairs their overall intake of other nutritious foods. So even at the point of weaning, we still do not introduce cow's milk. It predisposes them or puts them at risk of developing things like iron deficiency, anemia. So that one, we just save it for much later.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see that. All right. So after the first 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, we're introducing what? I've seen some parents gradually introducing like pureed foods before the 6 months, just to prepare them,
like to prime,
right? It's that.
Yeah.
But yes. So what is it that you see? What is the recommended way of now introducing solids and weaning them off breast milk?
Okay.
Yeah.
So weaning is a gradual process, yeah? And the reason why we say it's complementary is that even after we've started weaning, we're not doing away with the breastfeeding.
Okay.
We ideally continue up to a year. It's even better if you do up to 2 years, but people are different, and ability to continue breastfeeding up to 2 years may vary, but we do not do away with the breast milk, and it still remains the primary source of nutrients. Okay, it's just that at 6 months, we are continuing to have increasing demands, both from a nutritional standpoint and also from a developmental standpoint. So for growth, for the rapid growth and development of both the physical body and even of the brain. Yeah. So ideally, when you start the weaning process, you pick something that is simple, soft, and a single ingredient.
Simple, soft, single ingredient.
Yes.
Okay.
So I know sometimes in the stores you might come across a porridge that is labeled as baby weaning porridge or something like that. But onus is on us to make sure that it is a single ingredient substance, for example, porridge, yeah? The reason for this is that you do not want to introduce too many elements at a go. Should the child have some sort of reaction to it, like an allergic reaction, what would you pinpoint?
Okay.
So what we would recommend is, for example, if you're introducing porridge, choose a pure Wimby porridge or a pure maize meal porridge flour, and then you give that for a period of 3 days as you observe. How is the baby tolerating this? Are we having hard stools? Are we having loose or bloody stools? Are we having anything like that seems like a reaction to whatever we had given? And ideally, as you start it with a thin consistency, so you make it rather light, because we are moving from taking breast milk and now we're introducing a different texture. So we don't want it to be so thick that the child is constantly like gagging on it. Yeah. So we start with a thin consistency, and as time goes, we thicken that consistency, and we also increase the amount. You can even start with like 4 to 5 spoons initially. Okay. So it is very gradual. And then after the first 3 days, now we can introduce another element. So for example, you can choose to introduce bananas. Yeah. So you're giving porridge and bananas, even if you're mixing it up. But you see, we've only introduced one other element. So if we notice those reactions that we were talking about, what would we remove?
Yeah,
The banana.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is the gradual process that we are talking about. And then again, I was saying it's important to do this under the guidance of your healthcare provider. So that as you're introducing what is appropriate at that age.
Okay.
Because there are things that we save for later, and there are things that we start with.
Okay. Can we talk about those things?
Yes.
So that we don't lose it along the way. Yeah.
So, for example, at 6 months, in terms of carbohydrates, you can start with sweet potatoes, arrowroots, we've talked about, porridge. They're generally, like we said, simple, single ingredient. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
then,
for the sweet potatoes and arrowroots, what do you do? Do you mash them? What do you do so that, again, it's not too hard or too heavy on the baby?
Yes, you can mash, can puree, and even to make it lighter, you can even mix with breast milk or formula, just so that it's palatable. Remember, we've also changed the texture and taste of what the child is getting, and it is only natural that at first they may sort of wonder, what is this? What am I being introduced to? And you sort of try to make the transition easier. And then in terms of vegetables, we encourage leafy green vegetables. The greener and leafier they are, the more iron they have. So things like terere are really good. So just think leafy green vegetables. We can give lentils. We can give green peas. Amongst fruits, we have a wide array of fruits that we can give, from mangoes to bananas to watermelons. What we try to avoid are citrus fruits and berries, because they tend to give a bit of irritation to the child, and it may hamper this process of weaning.
All these things might be like a choking hazard to the baby. I think we'll discuss that at length when we come back from the break, but also understand the baby-led, weaning versus spoon feeding. There's a lot of debate surrounding the same, which works best for the baby, which helps the baby to sort of like adopt into this new way, of feeding. But again, we have you here to help us with that. Well, all that is coming up after the break. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Health Diary, and today we're focusing on weaning or complementary feeding. And we're just trying to understand, first of all, at what point do you wean the baby? What are some of the foods that you should avoid in this process of weaning? But also, what are some of the things that you should avoid introducing? We've seen some people add salt, sugar, some bit of margarine. Is this okay? Is that not? Well, we have Dr. Faith Atieno, who's a pediatric resident right here at Aga Khan University Hospital, to really, really help us understand whether this is true or not, or what we should or should not do. But even before that, there's some people who say, but the baby is telling me they are ready for said pureed meals or complete solid foods. But you said, listen, the first 6 months, absolute no, don't introduce this thing. So this person who said, but the baby is telling me, they're showing interest based on how they're behaving when we are eating as a family. So what do you do in such an instance?
You still resist the temptation. Yes, because they're developing, they're seeing what's happening in the environment. And those are cues that they're getting ready for the weaning process. Because at around that 6 months of life, they're sitting upright, they're holding their head steady, and they are showing interest in the food set that by the time you're starting the weaning at 6 months, baby is actually ready developmentally for that. It is not a cue for us to go against their advice.
Give them the carbone to just nibble on, and no, don't.
You can hold the excitement and give it at the right time.
At the right time. Okay. And also, before we went to the book, we talked about some of the things that are choking hazards for the baby. But also, do you want to help us understand the difference between choking and gagging? So that we don't panic when the baby is gagging.
So gagging occurs as a response to a stimulation at the back of the throat. And it's actually a reflex. We call it a gag reflex, and it is a normal thing. It's just that it may be stimulated by certain things. case in point, you know how sometimes when people put their fingers at the back of the throat to induce vomiting, that is a gag, because it's sort of protective, but choking is not normal, and it is actually life-threatening, and it occurs when food or food, water, or any other substance goes down the wrong pipe, so it's going into the airway where it doesn't belong, and it can end up causing quite some illness or some disease, depending on whether interventions were instituted in good time and to what degree that the injury that has been caused by the choking occurs.
Okay. All right. And then also on the question on should you introduce things like sugar, salt, margarine? You said honey, no, until a year. But yes, what are some of those things that should not be introduced?
So I know there's this pressure and desire to sort of try and make food tasty because it seems like their foods are bland, but that's how it's supposed to be. Starting with salt, babies are not born with the desire or urge to take salt. They don't know about it. And in fact, their kidneys are immature. Like they're not ready or able to handle excess salt or added salt. So we should not add salt to their meals. And even at actually beyond 1 year, when it may be acceptable because now they're being incorporated into the family diet, there are still limits to just how much salt can be added to their food. And those are some of the discussions that as the process of growth monitoring is being done, those are some of the discussions that that are had, because it's literally given in terms of do not exceed this number of grams per day and how it can be quantified. As regards sugar, it is natural and it is born inbuilt sort of to tend to gravitate towards sugary foods, and babies are not immune to that. And in fact, something like breast milk has this natural but slightly sweetened taste to it.
And talk about picky eating. Then I think that introduces the conversation about baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding. And there's a lot of debate surrounding it in terms of one leads to picky eater and others, doesn't at all. Just help us understand, this too, and if it actually works when it comes to some of these things that we expect to see.
So as regards baby-led weaning, as we know, it's essentially referring to letting the baby pick what they want, finger feed from 6 months, and it's like the weaning process is guided by the baby. While the traditional spoon feeding, well, some people try to start it even earlier, like at 4 to 6 months. It is the parent who is spearheading the process, giving pureed foods as opposed to more solid foods in the baby-led weaning, and increasing the texture and all that. But it is under the control of the parent. What we go by and what we recommend is what WHO recommends, which is none of the above. Like, it does not advocate for either the baby-led weaning or the spoon feeding. What WHO recommends is responsive feeding. So that means you assess, is the baby ready to do weaning? And usually by 6 months, with the prerequisites of what we are saying, baby is sitting upright, is holding the head upright, is showing interest in food, you can tell they're ready to go ahead and wean, and developmentally, they're already there. So you go ahead and feed. But you also respond to their cues. Like if baby is interested in feeding, they're reaching out for that food. And we have already said we are beyond the age where we can actually safely feed, then you do give the feeds. More emphasis is laying on giving nutrient-dense foods rather than in nitpicking as to whether I will let baby do them or I will I will dictate everything. So you can there's room for allowing baby to feed, but it has to be monitored. And it's usually not from the start, not from 6 months. It's a gradual process also. So you introduce, and then sometimes you can allow baby to be eating, but you monitor and you assist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In those cases, allergens, like allergic, what is it called? Like things that may be predisposing a child to, allergic reactions. What are some of those foods that maybe parents should be on the lookout for?
They're not specific foods that you should actually be on the lookout for. Matters allergy are patient specific, which means that a child already has a predisposition or a tendency to develop allergy. And usually that is more like a genetic predisposition to develop allergies. So that is very patient specific. You can find someone is allergic to all sorts of foods, cockroach danda, but where you trying to expose that in the food, and yet someone else is not really reacting to anything at all. And sometimes even when some of these evaluations are done to try and ascertain which food groups a child is allergic to, it is not a very objective measure.
All right.
And that's why we were talking about the slow introduction. Slow introduction, gradual as you monitor. Because if there's no that predisposition from the start, then we can't operate in a manner that is guided by fear and not introducing, and yet there's nothing that was already putting us at that risk.
So as we bring this to a close, then what are some of the expected challenges that parents just should be aware of? But you also mentioned earlier on patience. Please exercise patience, because it's not going to be pretty, it will be messy, it will be fussy, but exercise patience. But what are some of these are the challenges that parents should be aware of, and how do you help them to
to overcome
the
them.
challenges? Yes.
So one that you've just mentioned, messy eating. This is a child, they're learning how to control their movement, they're having motor development, so we do expect them to be messy, so let the child be. How you can go about that is maybe serve in smaller portions. You know exactly what baby was to eat in that meal, but you don't have to serve all of it at once because it will encourage the mess. But remember, this is a child, you also learned and you also came from somewhere, so allow them to be. Then another challenge would be the question of, is what I'm giving nutritious enough? Does it meet the nutritious requirements? Should I add this or that? And that's why we were saying it's important to make sure you're doing this under the guidance of your healthcare provider, and not certain untrusted sources.
That's true.
And then again, more emphasis on the quality of the food rather than the quantity, because you want a balanced and diverse diet. You do not want to only be giving one food group and then you're, for example, not giving your vitamins and vegetables that are a major source of nutrients that help in your immune system function. So you want to balance it out.
All right.
Another challenge that parents experience is, what if the baby refuses? Like you had said, that baby doesn't like this. What if they don't want it? Usually we encourage parents to make sure that feeding times are a pressure-free time and zone. Like this is this is a safe space, so that you're not feeling like you're under pressure to make this work, and you're not exerting all that pressure to the child as well. And we are also not trying things like force feeding and trying to hasten the process of feeding, because those are the things that even put children at the risk of choking. So we just really need to exercise that patience, and eventually we get the hang of it, baby gets the hang of it, and at least we manage to achieve what we are doing.
And give the baby the nutrient dense
exactly
food. It also help with their growth and development. Thank you so much, Dr. Faith Etieno, pediatric resident right here at Aga Khan University Hospital, giving us all the tidbits. But if you have any more question, again, our social media handles are at NTV Kenya, at Health Diary, at Lubembe_Winnie. But for that, time now for you to take a look at this health tip.
Neonatal screening or newborn screening involves screening for serious and often life-threatening illnesses. So the kind of illnesses that we screen for are vast. Some more commonly screened illnesses include congenital hypothyroidism, where we do thyroid function tests early in the first few days of life. It's not a very common illness, but its effects and its impact on the immune system, on the development and overall growth of the child are dire should there be no intervention. There are also other illnesses for which we screen, including what we consider critical congenital heart diseases, which can be fatal if they are not detected early and interventions given. We also screen for blood disorders and hemoglobin disorders such as sickle cell. We screen for other endocrine disorders. We screen for metabolic disorders as well. We also screen for things like cystic fibrosis. So usually there are tests that exist that can screen for like some sort of a panel of diseases, but also we can tailor the newborn screening based on a patient's risk profile, which includes genetic predisposition, family history, among other factors.
Well, that marks the end of our conversation today right here on Health Diary. And now you know better, and especially when it comes to weaning, how long it takes and what you're introducing to your baby, even as you not only completely do away with breastfeeding. And that is why it's called complementary feeding. You know what to include and what not to include when you are weaning. But if you have any other question, our social media handles down at the bottom of your screen. But for now, allow us to say goodbye. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and a special thanks to the Aga Khan University for hosting us today. Until next time, adios. Baby weaning versus baby-led. No, they said baby-led. Wait, is that baby-led weaning and spoon feeding? Got that? Wait, spoon feeding.